Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. This time it is a tag video set out by Man from Beantown, Ben. This I think is a pretty cool tag because I somewhat influenced it with my collecting the joys of collecting anything video I made a couple days ago. And Ben was cool enough, nice enough, or influenced enough by that video to set out a tag and talk about some of the things that he likes to collect. And his big thing is completing his Journey into Mystery series. And he's got they're all in pretty great shape. You know, I think most of them are above 5.0, so that says a lot. That's pretty good. Wonderful, Ben. I said he showed all these books off, and they're really, really nice looking, and he showed all the ones that he still needs and stuff like that. So thanks, Ben. Big thanks to Ben, Man from Beantown. Sub him up, check him out. Big thanks to him for creating this tag video. And he personally tagged me and several others. And then he's tagged the whole community too to do this. So anybody that wants to participate in this, go right ahead. And that's my tag. I tag everybody. Anyone who sees this video, go right ahead. So basically it's about the joys of collecting. Collecting anything. Whatever you like. What is it that you're collecting now when it comes to comics, when it comes to anything? What brings you joy? What makes you happy with what you're collecting? So I came up with a bunch of things here. Since I'm going to try to do that video game history thing I keep saying I'm going to do over and over again, I will attempt to do it soon, before the holiday, before Christmas. So I have a couple of things here, like when it comes to games, that has brought me joy. One of the reasons why I enjoy collecting or having things in my collection. I got a few comics to show, nothing that you haven't seen before, and something else. So, how am I going to start this out? Well, I guess I'll start it out with the holiday coming up, Christmas. Now, I have a lot of great Christmas memories, both in in later years, enjoying the holiday, the build up to the holiday, and as a kid or as a teenager, young teen, getting stuff on Christmas. So there's a lot of different reasons why I enjoy the holiday, and what I just said just being some of them. But when it comes to actually getting something, waking up Christmas morning and getting something that you really wanted, that gives you so much joy, I have a couple of things here that really stick out in my mind that I'd like to show you. And they're games, okay? So for those of you that are not into games, you may not find this video too appealing because there's a lot of games here and a few comics. But one of the best Christmas memories I have comes from 1991. And it's when I got this game here, Super Castlevania 4. I'm not going to go into detail about any of these things too much, but it was definitely the game that I was waiting for a long time. When I finally got that Super Nintendo, I said, when are they going to make a Castlevania? They made a Castlevania for it almost immediately, and I got it for Christmas, and it truly was one of the best Castlevanias that I ever purchased. Well, I didn't purchase it, my mother got it for me, but I ever received. And that brought a lot of joy to me, and so much joy that I started collecting all the Castlevania games. Later on, I got them when they first came out, and some I missed. But in later years, I managed to start collecting all the Castlevania games, and I got a pretty decent amount. So from that joy, it spread out into collecting. So, starting with that one. Another great one. This was Christmas 1993. It was also the Christmas that I got the actual Sega CD, the very first video game system I ever got for Christmas. This was when I was a comic book fan, right? I started collecting comics in '93. Those of you who follow my videos, you know. Well, I got this Christmas 1993, so you could imagine the joy I felt, with collecting comics, really enjoying that, and able to get a game that really closely resembled the comic. This was pretty much a reboot of the Sega Genesis Spider-Man vs. Kingpin, but I think the graphics were a little bit better, the sound was terrific, and they added animated cutscenes. The acting is terrible, of course, but that gave it charm. But, if you were a Spider-Man fan and you had a Sega CD, you had to get this game. It was great. It really was great. And for those that watch the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon series, the voice of Splinter voiced the Kingpin. He has a very distinguishable voice. So for those of you that are familiar with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if you watch any of the cutscenes from this game on YouTube, you'll know that the Kingpin's voice is the same as Splinter. But yeah, this was great. They even threw in a couple of Daredevil characters, like Bullseye and Typhoid Mary in this. You know, the level you're going to fight the Kingpin. So I thought that was really, really good. And Venom's in this. This was right around the time I got the first appearance of Venom, so I was really, really enjoying the hobby and looking forward to collecting more and so forth. And the last one for Christmas that I got was in 1996. Mortal Kombat Trilogy. This was the very first game I got for the PlayStation, and this is the reason why I even got the PlayStation. And the PlayStation was the second video game system I got for Christmas. Big Mortal Kombat fan. For those of you that are into fighting games, I know a lot of you in the community like playing Injustice. Well, Injustice was made by the people that made Mortal Kombat. They used the same fighting engine as the newer Mortal Kombats that came out. I mean, obviously, this Mortal Kombat trilogy, which is a culmination of 1, 2, 3, and Ultimate, where you could be all the characters, it's a little different than the revamp of Mortal Kombat. But those of you that play Injustice and Injustice 2, I started playing Injustice 2. It's pretty cool. Though the guys that made this, made Injustice, created the engine, the fighting engine for that. And I think they did a damn good job, too. Now, this next one here, another thing that I really enjoyed collecting, I don't collect them as much anymore. I don't collect them at all, I should say. But I used to have a nice collection of them, both loose and on card. Now, this one's for Kingdom Comics, Tito. Remember, I mentioned him in my last video, in the joy of collecting. Hammerhand. It's a little jacked up, right? You know, it's not in the best shape, but it's on card. This was my favorite Thundercats toy. Now, I purchased this on card about 20 years ago when eBay was in its infancy. 20 years ago, 18 years ago, 19 years ago, something like that. It may have not been 20 years ago, but around when eBay was practically brand new. And I think I got this for like $12. I don't know if it was shipped. I'm probably wound up paying like $20 shipped, maybe. But yeah, Hammerhand. One of my greatest memories is when, believe it or not, my father brought home Hammerhand for me when I was a kid. Of course, my mother had to tell him to get it, but I thought that was like the greatest Thundercats figure, and that's what I used to collect when I was a kid. I used to collect those Thundercats figures whenever I could, and I had a good collection too. And around that time when I purchased this, I was collecting them on card, and I sold them off several years ago, and you got comics with them. But yes, another thing that I enjoyed collecting. Let's get back to some games. Let's talk about birthday. This was my birthday, 1988. I had this game since 1988. 19 and a half years ago I got this. My cousin Cindy introduced me to Castlevania. And about a month or two later, when it was my birthday, after I was introduced to it, I got my own copy. And yeah, you saw I showed you Super Castlevania 4 a few moments ago. It's definitely a game, one of my favorite video game series of all time. And in 1992, here we go, I always do time, I got this for my birthday. This is one of the best Genesis games I ever played. It's a pretty difficult game. And it's quite short. It's in length. It's not a long game at all, but I enjoyed playing every moment of it. It was a great game and a great birthday gift. Okay, another gaming series that I'm very happy to have. I love it now. They're now defunct. Working Designs. Anybody that was a video game player or collector or into RPGs knows about Working Designs. Now, I have a bunch of Working Designs games. I'm not going to show them all, but I'm just going to stick with my Sega CD collection when it comes to Working Designs. This is a collection that I was very happy to collect and brought me a lot of joy. Lunar, the Silver Star. Great game. Sega CD was doing things that were quite revolutionary, but the system never got any sort of recognition. Vi, another RPG. I'm showing them in the order in which they came out. Popful Mail, another great game. If you like anime, you'll definitely like these type of anything from Working Designs, because they usually add cutscenes, and they're known for when they translate the Japanese to English, they take liberties with it, and they add a lot of funny dialogue that's not in the original Japanese text, and throw a lot of pop culture things into it. And Lunar the Silver Star, Lunar 2 Eternal Blue. Very proud to have this in my collection. Whenever I think about the summer before I went to college, it was a great summer. I was hanging out with my friend Chris. I think I briefly mentioned him in my year 3 video, and he's the one that introduced me to the Sega Saturn. And one of the things that I remember right after graduating high school into the summer of that year, we used to play the Sega Saturn, and I eventually got it. But the game that really sold me on the Sega Saturn was this, Guardian Heroes. Actually, the fun, I don't want to know if I'm going to get too deep into the story. But Chris, my friend, his friend Joe used to come over. Not my friend Joe. This was another Joe. He used to come over, and he would bring certain games over to Chris's house and let him try it. But Chris didn't really like this guy too much. He was a little odd. This guy Joe was pretty much the stereotype of what we would call a nerd. You know, the thick glasses, the button-down shirt, the poorly dressed. He would act like a nerd sometimes, you know, do like funky things. He would do the Beavis and Butthead voice over and over again where it wasn't funny. So that's the stereotype. Something like from Revenge of the Nerds, like a Louis Skolnick looking guy, except with like blonde hair. And he acted very much like that, geeky. But this guy, though, he was pretty interesting. You would think that he was, geeky by the way he acted and the way he looked, but he was actually really tough. I remember when we used to play football with him, this guy would knock you right on your ass. And I remember there was one time he actually pulled a knife on somebody. So yeah, you didn't really want to mess with this guy. So I think that's one of the reasons why whenever he came over at Chris's house without calling, which pissed him off. And, but he would always let him in and, hey, what's going on? He seemed like he was cool, a little annoying, but he's the one that brought over Guardian Heroes, long story short, too late. And the last set of games I want to show that I'm really proud to have, a series for the Sega Saturn, which I enjoyed getting over the years, well, the couple years after the Saturn died, Panzer Dragoon. Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei, which is German for 2, so it's a little redundant, and Panzer Dragoon Saga. All wonderful game series. Too bad you don't see them anymore. Now we'll get to a couple of comics before I close this video out. This video has been fun to make. There's so many other things I would like to show, but, I don't really feel like making a half-hour video, and I'm sure nobody wants to see another half-hour video. But we're getting close to 15 minutes, so I don't know how good I did. These are just books that I'm pretty sure you could figure out that would be on my list that I'm so happy to have in my collection. They're not necessarily, none of these things are necessarily a run, so to speak. Like, I know a band from Beantown, he's doing his Journey into Mystery run. I don't necessarily work on runs as much. I just collect some of the things that, I like, that are meaningful to me. And of course, you know that this one's on there. My Detective 140. We've all seen this one at least a dozen times, and we're getting close to seeing this one a dozen times too. Haunt of Fear. Look, this is my favorite comic book cover. It has to be in a video like this. I love collecting ECs, and I would love to collect. I dare say all of the EC horrors. I don't know how possible that's going to be. It may not be, because some of them are ridiculously priced, and just not worth paying that much. High grade or low grade, to be quite frank. But it's definitely something, the collecting ECs really brings me joy. I love collecting ECs. And I'm starting to try to get into some of those war ones too. And the crime ones are great. So they're just wonderful to have. But I'm going to close this video with this book here. Excuse me. Definitely a joy when I first got it. I mean, it's still a joy to have, of course, but when I first got it, this was like something that, and you've heard me say this before, this is something that I thought I would never be able to do. Starting to collect back in 1993, and you fast forward a decade, a little over, more, and finally add this book to my collection. If you would have told me this back in 1993, I never would have believed you. But I finally did it. And this was several years ago, but definitely a book that's a milestone when it comes to the Reaper collection. X-Men #1. Now, it's not the highest grade, right? And it's got its flaws. But I did get it signed by Stan Lee. Those of you that were with me during the New York Comic Con 2000 and, what was it, 16? Yeah. Andoni and Vince, Semperfi comic book guy. You guys were with me when I had this book, and I was waiting on that 4-hour line for Stan Lee, where the one guy passed out online. I'll never do that again. My back was killing me for days. But it was a goal of mine to get this book in particular. The book that, when I became a comic book collector, it was the X-Men. The X-Men that I was after. And what better X-Men book to have than their first appearance? And the first appearance of Magneto, so it's a double whammy, this one. You got the X-Men, and you got their greatest enemy, and a really powerful enemy in the Marvel Universe, Magneto. Is there somebody that Magneto really can't utterly destroy, though? I mean, because his powers are just, if you think about it, are just so, overwhelming to a lot of characters in the Marvel Universe. I mean, I'm sure there are, but think about it. He's a really powerful villain, and I think he's pretty much like an anti-hero, so I think that's one of the reasons why his popularity has endured for so long. But yeah, the joy of having X-Men #1 in my collection. Low grade, high grade, whatever. Truly happy to have this, and I proudly have this displayed on the wall next to a couple other books that we'll talk about in the future. Well, thanks again, Ben, for making this great tag. Like I said, I tag everybody that watches. Anybody that wants to do this, you're tagged. Consider yourself tagged. Great video idea. Thank you once again, Ben, Sub Up Man from Beantown, and I hope you all stood with me through these 18 minutes, me rambling about games and action figures and Christmas and birthdays and X-Men, all that stuff. Well, hope to release another video soon. I hope you'll stick around and watch when it does come out. And all of you, take care. Bye-bye.